Hey everybody, it's Nate Temple. I'm back with some more of the cross-section work that I'm going to do. You might have seen the earlier video where I was working on the cross-section of the ship for my project Cosmos Universe. So open up the document. When I last left off, I was creating like a random piece of technology to shove inside the ship, and so what we're going to do is kind of go and start off from that point. So here's the little piece of the ship that I was working on, this little tiny bit of technology that I was going to shove inside. So we'll just move this. Actually, we'll keep it down here because I'm gonna have to eventually erase out parts of this in order to fit it inside where I'm gonna put it, because there's so much stuff going on inside that things are gonna force it to. I'm gonna have to erase things. So it's good to do a complete piece and then hold it outside on a separate layer over here. Whoops. On a separate layer over here. That way, when I duplicate it, and the shortcut for duplicate, you can go over here and right click, and you can do duplicate right here. But the faster way is to just hold the Alt key, and you see how the cursor changes to like a duplicate cursor, and then I just pull it off, and then it makes a duplicate layer over here on the layer window. That way the duplicate is going to get modified. It'll have pieces of it erased out, and then the master one will be down here outside of the drawing for when if we want to use it again, or if we want to use pieces of it again. And so I'm going to move this down to the master layer that's down here. It's been colored purple, so I know that it's special, and I'm going to put it right in here. Now you can see there's a lot of it's already going to be erased out, but I'm trying to just arrange it so that I can show something like an interesting aspect of the piece, so that it's interesting to look at. Like I could do that, but then there's like a lot of blank area right there. So if I go down, this fills up the majority of that blank area. You've only got a little bit of pixels here and a little bit of pixels here for that blank area. So, and we also need to look out for tangents, like I was explaining before. If you hadn't seen the previous video, tangents are where lines connect. So, and lines connect, and it makes the drawing look funny, or it brings the eye, it confuses the eye. And so like a bad tangent for this would be like bringing this line right into where these two big heavy line weights meet. That would be a bad tangent, because you don't want them to meet where there's like connections. You always want them to meet off to the side where it's clear that they're intersecting or going behind something. So that looks, well, we can do that. That looks good. And then we'll just erase out the parts that are supposed to be behind everything. And then and now it's in there. And then over here we just merge the layer down, cook and bake it in to the master layer, and that's done. So this area I worked on before was all blank, and now it's mostly filled in. There's a little blank area here and there, but I don't think you don't always want to fill in everything with stuff, because it might get a little too noisy or whatnot. So I just figure, having a blank spot there is fine, and it helps to delineate. These heavy line weights help help break out the layering of what's what. So I'll just leave that. I'll just call that section finished. And there's actually one more section, a smaller section way over here that I wanted to work on before I called this thing finished. And it's right in here. I was working on it and I got distracted and then I never worked on it again. So what I'm going to do here, I'm going to thicken, I'm going to go to my line tool and I'm going to thicken this line weight a tiny bit more so that it's clear. That is, and then I'm going to thicken this line weight up here so we get a better idea of what's supposed to be where. And then do that. Thicken these lines a little more. That helps a little bit. And then we should probably thicken this guy up. Because he is in front of everything. Thicken this line up to show that it's in front of all that other stuff. Got a little bit of a gap there. Trim this line weight down a little, and now let's get to adding some more stuff. So, whoops. What should I put in? So I'm gonna put let's see, I'll put something going this way, and then another. Let's go a little up, a little more, so the tangent's not so in our way. And then another piece here, and then a little tiny piece here to show a little bit of a bevel, because what we're going to have is this part sloping and then coming straight down like that. So this right here will be the top, and so that, make it a little bit thicker, make this a little bit thicker, and now I think I'll cut into it. And then I'll erase this stuff out, because I'm going to put something in there. Actually, I'm going to erase this stuff because I'm going to have it protrude out a little further. Bit of a bevel, and a little bit of a thicker line, and then here. Just for little detail. And then, so what I'm going to do, so I don't have to do this every time, is I'm going to just erase out a chunk here. So that I've got this exactly the same. I'm just going to clone it. So I don't have to worry about having to make it look exactly the same every time. I can just copy it. Now right now it's on, like, we've got a selection, but we're still on the same layer over here. And what happens is if I just deselect this selection, what's going to happen is it's going to automatically bake down into the line art on this layer. That means all this line art from this stuff from this other piece of art is going to intersect, and I'll have to like erase it out and everything. So see, if I deselect it, see how this line's going through it, this heavier line, I'll have to like go in there and like really carefully erase that all out because it's all in the same layer. But if I cut that piece and then paste it again, it puts it on its own layer right here. And now I can place it, and then I can erase out the parts that I don't need, and then bake it down, and everything's dandy. And it's a lot faster than having to do it all on one layer, because then it's kind of a hassle. It takes time, and it sort of sucks the fun out of it. I'll have to do a little bit more of this guy, because there's more of that showing here than there was in the original guy that we copied. So I'll just bring him down, bring that down there. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to do something new here. So I'm going to put like a lot of really small detail in, but it's going to be a pattern, and it's going to repeat a lot, and I don't want to have to freehand it. So what I'm going to do is make a new layer, and then I'm going to draw the little freehand piece. I'm going to draw it once, and then I'm going to copy it, and then I'm going to hold Alt down and then Shift, and then bring it right over, and then I'll hold Alt and Shift again and hold it right over. Now I want to make sure the space, the negative space in here, is the same distance, and then I'll deselect that and then select the whole thing again, and then hold Shift down. So if you hold Shift, see how it wants to snap? This makes it easier so it all stays aligned if you hold Shift down. So you make sure these negative spaces are the equal distance from each other. You can eyeball it, it's not that big a deal. And then we'll do one more. That should be enough to go on. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a copy so that the original is down here, because maybe I'll want to use it again, because this copy is going to get changed. I'm going to alter it, but you always want like an unaltered master version if you want to go and mess with it again. I'm going to go up here, I'm going to use transform to get that transform cage, and then I'm going to rotate it so that it's matching the bottom part of that transform cage is going in the same direction parallel with these grid lines. And if you want to use the arrow keys, you can nudge it a little bit per pixel. And then I'm going to hold down Control, and see how it turns into like a checkered arrow? That means you can grab the node and you can individually mess with the node. So I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to move it down here so that these lines here are going parallel in this direction, in the opposite direction of the bottom part of the transform cage. And what's that doing? What that is doing is it's putting the pattern, the artwork, in perspective with everything else. We hit enter, And now we can put it like that. Well, no, I want to put it like that. That'll be good. And then erase out all the unwanted stuff. And now see how it is kind of fuzzy and sort of messy. So what we're going to do is go up to filter and click on sharpen, and see how it sharpened it. If I undo it, it goes fuzzy again like it originally was, and then I hit the sharpen. See how it goes back and forth? It gets sharpened a little bit. You want that because whenever you do a transform function, Photoshop wants to anti-alias it, which means it wants to make it fuzzier and rounder and softer, which in some cases that's a good thing, but when you're working at a really small size, because we're at like 300%, so when you're working at a really small size, you want the edges to be as tight as you can make it. So I'm going to go in here and kind of make it a little bit cleaner, because some of these lines are a little still flimsy after sharpening. And then when you zoom out, see it's nice and crisp, and then you don't have that those little extraneous transparent pixels making problems for you. And it's just a little thing to add detail. And then we'll go back to the layer that had this guy. Whoa, who is this? Oh, we got to merge down the guy we just cleaned up and transformed. And then we'll go back to this and have this guy here. So he's in the artwork, so we got to move him out of the way. So we'll move him down out here, outside, and then we'll move the other piece of art next. We'll move them, kind of group them together so that they're out of the way. Actually, we'll just put them in one layer together. Now they're all in one layer. Now I'll go back to my main art. We'll go back to that spot we were working on, and then thicken up some of these lines a little more, and then add some more detail here, maybe. So, oh, I know what I'm going to do. So I'm going to do some parts that are going to be really repetitious, and the thing with doing technical stuff is you can be allowed to make a lot of repetitions, because technology usually has a lot of redundancies in it, so you can copy stuff over and over and over again and it won't look too out of the ordinary, because everything is machined. It's all got to look like it came out of the same factory, or it was all just like machined to fit together and to look like it belongs together. So a lot of stuff will look similar. So I'm gonna bevel this part, really tiny bevel, like 1 pixel separation from each other. And now what I'm doing here, actually I gotta separate this onto its own layer because I was working on the master line art. So it's on its own layer over here. But so what I'm doing here is I'm making the entire piece, and then like I did before with that other piece of tech, I'm going to make this entire piece, and then I'm going to then make a copy of it and put it inside the ship, in which case I'll have to destroy it by erasing pieces out. So it's a good idea, like I mentioned before, to have a full exact piece already made. So I'm going to clone this piece. I'm going to make sure it's still in perspective. Let's see here. So got a little bit of a perspective error because I made this second piece a little bit longer so it doesn't connect with the side of the other one. But we'll fix that. So we'll just erase out this part and then erase out that side piece and erase out that. And what we're going to do is we'll just make it a tiny bit longer so that it connects. everything should be dandy. They're getting a lot of like transparent pixels in here, which is really not cool. So I'm gonna use the rectangular marquee tool and just delete out some of these extra pixels, so only the lines I want to show up are there. Now it looks a lot cleaner. Oops. Try that again. That was on another layer. There we go. Now it's a little bit cleaner. Merge that down. And then take this piece again. And then copy it out. Holding the Alt key so we're on the same layer. It's not making a new layer. And then I'm just going to connect the pieces as we go and make this like a sort of like a big tube. And then see, I've got it connected. I was hiding the selection, which is Control H, or you can go up here at the top, you go select, and then oh, where is it? Is it in here? Wait, that's not it. I don't use these things a lot often. No. Weird. You would think hide selection would be up there. It used to be up there in earlier versions of Photoshop, but whatever. It's up there somewhere, but the shortcut key is Control H to hide the selections. Besides, you're better off knowing the shortcut key anyways. It's faster. And then, because this is going to be the ending piece, I'm going to thicken up the outline to help signify the edge. I'm going to add some more pieces to this to make it a little bit more interesting, but I gotta make this outline a little bit thicker so it looks a little bit more of like has a bit more of a final line to it. You don't want to make the line too thick, because like if I make the line really thick like that, I mean it's like I mean, like it kills it. Like you lose the silhouette of these pieces coming out. So you just want it to be just a little bit thick. And besides, you want the things that are closest to you to have the a thicker line. So this thing right here will have a thicker line because it's closer to the eye than the stuff back here is, because see how it goes underneath this part. So this line here is meant to be thicker, so to delineate that, oh, this piece is closer than the stuff over here, this stuff is behind it. And each piece that goes further back in the distance, the lines get thinner, and so each outline gets a thinner line weight than the one before it. And that's how it helps sell the illusion that things are in the distance when you're just working with line art. If you're working with colors or with like grayscale values, then it turns into something else. There's a different way to do it, because then you're not focusing on lines per se, but more on shading and shape and what's it called, atmospheric perspective and all this other stuff. But since this is just a line drawing, you only have to worry about line weights and stuff like that. So we've got this nice, cool little piece of conduit or something like that. Maybe it's like a tube that funnels, I don't know, shoot. You know what I just did? I just put these line weights on the wrong layer. Woo! There. See what happens when I talk and draw at the same time? Okay, so now I'll just go back and... Okay, so now I've got this piece here, and I'm going to add like another connector here. Little bevel, and go down, make it look like it's tapering in a little bit. And then make this line a little thicker. And then I'll draw little detail pieces. Maybe this is where, like little mini panels, where the screws that hold everything, hold the pieces together, are hiding. And then, actually, you know what? This will be a little bit better. I'm gonna turn those pieces into cavities. So if we draw a little inside corner line there. Now it looks like there's little cavities in there of negative space. That'll make it look a little bit more interesting, I think. There. Yeah, that looks a little bit cooler. And then, let's see. So we're going to put it back here, and it's going to go underneath this piece of the skeleton of the ship. So, see how like a good chunk of it's going to get erased. Which is why it's good to do it out here, so you can do the whole complete piece. That way, if you want to like repeat this detail somewhere else in the drawing, or you want to use pieces of it and clobber together other pieces that you've drawn to make new machines to save time, that's why it's all good to keep finished pieces out here, and then you make copies and put them inside. So I'm not going to deal with anything out here because it's just going to get deleted. It's behind all that stuff. So, but I'm gonna move it out here and team it up with these guys down here. Woohoo! And then I'm gonna copy it out so it's on its own layer, and then move it back up to where we were before. Then actually, maybe if I put maybe it's a really important piece, and I'll put two of them together. That's kind of cool. And then I'll delete that piece out, and then I'll erase out this chunk, and then I'll erase out this chunk, and then this piece here, because it's behind the other piece of tubing, and then erase this because it's underneath the hull of the ship. Oops. And then merge those down to the merge those. Let's see, what layer is that on? Is that on? Yeah. So I'll move it underneath that. So if you want to move layers around, you just like hold the layer and you drag it around, and you'll see the line gets underneath between layers, turns thick, and that's where you will drop the layer. So I'm going to drop so this layer needs to be above the main layer where all the line art is, because I'm going to merge this layer down. So we can go over here and go merge down, which is, it's all, the shortcut is Control E. So I just do Control E because it's faster. And now this piece we just made is connected in with the main pieces of the line art. And then I'll just throw in some random vertical lines here to kind of show, oh, maybe there's some extra pieces going on here. Sometimes you don't need to make complete pieces all the time. Sometimes it's just like filler. So, but I mean, it's up to your discretion. If you want to make like full pieces to everything, then, you know, knock yourself out. That's going to be a bad tangent. I want it to come out right there. Yeah. So I'm just going to make little piping conduits or something that come out. And then I'm going to switch to the drawing pen and just draw some circles. So just gonna keep drawing in these little circles. Actually, I'm gonna draw blacken in that area, make it look like it's thinner in there. And then go back to my line tool, line a tiny bit. And then I'll just copy. Copy the tube. I'll just put it over. I'll make it overlap. No. I'll put it down here. And fill in the space. So now there's a piece of open area here that I'm gonna fill up. Not quite parallel. It's not either. There we go. And I'm going to freehand this a little bit. I'm just making more random stuff here, just techie stuff. Now I'm gonna make this. I'm gonna make like a little grill where there's like holes. Make a little dotted pattern. To help it look a little interesting. So a lot of machinery has these types of like grill covers on them with holes, and usually that's for usually they put grills like that over pipes or conduits or whatever when the pipe gets hot, these covers with the grills on them are put there so that it can be touched and the metal will be cool, but the holes here are so that the metal that's hot underneath can vent the hot air out of these holes. So it makes it so that people, like machine guns have these, and like hot and like machinery have these on pipes that get hot, and it's just like a safety measure. And so I learned this stuff from just viewing a lot of like technical reference and stuff, and eventually you just like memorize it, and you just learn that, oh well, I know. You just learn like what technical stuff, industrial stuff looks like when you look at it enough. And that doesn't mean that I don't like ever reference. Sometimes I still do reference, because maybe, you know, technology will vary through time periods. So, you know, Victorian era tech is going to look totally different than, you know, modern era tech, because Victorian era didn't use integrated circuits, and they didn't have the fabrication techniques that we have today. So a lot of the materials and shapes that we use for modern technology will not be available to like Victorian age technology. Victorian age tech is very much like brass and steam-driven mechanics, very rudimentary electricity, stuff like that, fire-driven. And so you're going to have like wood paneling and copper, metal tubings, gauges. Everything is going to be very analog looking. Big rivets, stuff like that. So this looks like almost done. That area looks full enough. I'm going to go up here and add just a little bit of things. Maybe I'll add a piece that goes similar to, like, I'll make something that looks like a radiator that's similar to a turn of the last century, like early 20th century radiator. So they're gonna look. It's gonna look like a giant, big, fat heat sink. And that's another thing is like, if you're looking to like make up machinery that looks convincing, or you know, stuff like that, always look for old tech that you can repurpose by redesigning it and making it look like new tech. So I'm just taking like an old like heat sink here. Like this actually looks like a big heat sink you'd see off of a CPU, and I'm using it for a piece of tech on inside this ship to make it look like it does stuff. So oops. And then I'm gonna erase this part here. Do that again. Oops. Corner piece in there, and then maybe sometimes making tech that's asymmetrical helps in realism. So asymmetrical tech, if you don't know what asymmetry is symmetry is where both sides are exactly the same, and asymmetry is where both sides are different. Either side is different. sometimes tech doesn't have symmetry. So thicken this part up. And then maybe I'll draw in some flexible tubing. Whoops. I don't like that. Maybe I'll just make it parallel. Go back to the line tool. Actually, I think I'll make a circle. So do the stroke command with 1 pixel across, and then deselect that. And actually, I need to put this on its own layer, so I'll cut that and paste it into its own layer, and then manipulate the cage, the transform cage, so the bottom is parallel with these lines going up to the upper left, and then a little bit to the left, and then Control F for the sharpen filter, and then the move tool, which is V in the shortcut. I'm gonna select that, go back to the previous layer that I copied from and delete that out, so now it looks like it has thickness. Go back to the top layer. Now how normally you can use the mouse to click these layers, but the shortcut key for moving in between layers without having to go back over there is Alt and then the bracket keys. And the bracket keys are right next to the letter P key. So you hit Alt and the left bracket moves you down the layer list and the right bracket moves you up. So that's another thing that helps you move a little bit, operate a little bit faster in Photoshop. Whoops, moved it. And then I'm going to move another piece out, and then I'm going to shrink that, and I'm not going to sharpen. Okay, see how it anti-alias did again? It made it soft. I'm not going to worry about sharpening it yet because there's still one more thing I want to do. I'm going to shrink it down again. Now I'm going to sharpen that one because that one's a lot smaller. I'm going to merge those two down, and then I'm going to clean inside there. Whoops. I've got a button on my stylus that turns on the brush tool, and my finger bumps into it every time I use my pen, so oh well. And then I'm going to cut through here and then use this part of this inner circle. I'm going to cut it out, make it its own layer. I'm going to push it in, delete out the areas that are hidden behind the other parts, and then I'm going to merge these layers together. So I can just merge down repetitively, or I can click this layer, hold Shift down, and go down to the most bottom layer I want to merge, and it gets everything in between. And then I will hit Control E to merge down, and now it merges it all together. Oops, looks like I didn't get everything, so I'll just merge down one more time. So now we've got this cool piece. It's got thickness in it, it's got a little bit of a bevel, and it's got a cavity inside in the center. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put a really thick mesh in there to make it look like it's like a grill. So I'm going to go up here to another layer I had turned off earlier. And I got this huge dark piece. And what this is this is a bunch of lines that are flowing against one another. They're going this way and going this way, and so it creates a checker pattern. So I'm going to move it over my little piece here, and then I'm just going to use the marquee tool to grab a chunk of it and then copy it out onto its own layer. So now it looks darker because there's a second layer on top of that. So I'm going to turn off that master layer, and now I'm left with this little circle patch I cut out. Now what I'm going to do is, because I can't see this shape very well underneath that mesh I cut out, I'm going to use the lasso tool and draw in where I want that mesh to be in here, and then turn it back on. Whoops, that's the wrong one. Turn this back on, and then now this selection, if I just delete, it's just going to delete the opposite of what I want out. So what I want to do is I want to invert the selection. So it'll take out all this stuff and keep and preserve the stuff that's inside. And to do that is you do Control-Shift-I to invert, and then when I delete, it deletes everything but the selection I've preserved. And now I've got this like cool little mesh texture inside my little piece of equipment that I made. And I'm going to move that mesh texture down to where my working area is. I'm going to merge that with the rest of what I've been working on, so now it's one final piece. Now I'm going to do one more little piece of detail. I'm going to add little dots to show like little rivet areas. You see now it looks like there's little rivets in there. Just one little piece of detail that makes it helps it look a little bit cooler. And then I'm gonna pop it in here. So somewhere in there, I think I'll put it underneath. So like maybe part of it's like that, and then I'll erase out this top part so it looks like it's underneath this piece of the ship's hull. So actually I kind of like that piece, so I'm gonna make a copy of it and move it out with the rest of my other finished pieces, because I may want to use that again. So make sure that's that layer. So go up there and merge down. So they're there now, and then I'm gonna go back to where I was working. I'm gonna erase out the part I don't need anymore. There, now we've got this cool little cap hanging in there. It looks like the cap to a tank, like a fuel tanker or something. So I'm gonna create a bottom part that makes it look like it's the cap to a larger container. And then I'm just gonna freehand. I'm just gonna eyeball in the circle areas. I'll just draw some quick details in real quick. I'll just sketch it real fast, and then thicken that bottom line up a little bit more. And then I'll put maybe it's sitting on little braces. I think that's good enough. So now I've got in all the detail that I think I want to put. So I'm going to turn off those extra pieces, and then I'm going to zoom out, and then I'm going to turn on the, whoops. Let's see here. Turn on that. And then, oh yes, and then turn on this. And then I have to turn that off. And then, oh wait, I know what I have to do. I forgot to turn on the layers that differentiate everything. So now I'm going to turn on the gray superstructure. So these different shades of blue help help break out pieces of the ship. So the superstructure of the ship, the skeleton of the ship, is a lighter blue, and then the engine is let's see, got the engine there, and then the rooms are going to be a lot lighter, and then I'll add shadow, and then the whole exterior to break that out. Now it's starting to look more like a blueprint. But I'm not finished yet. Let's see. Oh, and I gotta turn on the... Silly me. I need to turn on the... There we go. Now I've got the little panel areas open. Now what I need to do is I've got to go in, and because I made alterations earlier to the ship, and so I have to make sure the color-coded areas are consistent too. So before, I didn't have this broken open, and so I have to go back down to where I have the gray superstructure, and I have to actually I'm going to turn that off again so I know. So I have to delete that out because there's no longer any gray stuff there. And there's no gray stuff here either. To append to this stuff so it looks correct again, and then there's no the rooms, whoopsie daisy. I have to sample that and then color. Why is it not? Something is afoot. Interesting. I'm going to turn that off, the gray superstructure off, and find out what pieces belong to which. Whole exterior. So, yes. So I am grabbing that, but why? What I want to know is why is it turning black? Oh, because I have black on foreground, so I'll just click that and bring my sample color to the foreground, in which case X will actually swap background to foreground. So now that it's in the foreground, it'll work. Now we'll just color in the correct space, and then so this area here, this maintenance area, is a room, so we will color code that. Almost got this poster finished. Actually, I'm gonna make sure I've got this consistent. What is that other? Okay, so the other room was. I'm gonna bring that. I can make that part of the background again. And then what was? So the doors were actually part of the superstructure. So I'll go back to the superstructure, sample that color, and then color that in. And then we'll do it again up here for this panel. I went outside the line, so I gotta clean that. And then make sure I got every little piece. Whoops. Let's see here, go back. See some little bits of noise, random noise, and try to clean out. It looks like added everything in that needs to be added. So looks like we're good to go. So we'll turn all the final pieces back on. Everything's correct again. And oops, what is this? There's a little piece of a unwanted piece of color there. So what would that be? Oh, it looks like it's part of the gray superstructure. So I'll just erase that out, make sure it's clean. And then everything looks, oh, so this inside piece right here, all this negative space needs to be the same color as this outside, and so does this negative space of the engine area. So we gotta do that too. So that sits on top of. Sometimes there's a bit of detective work. So there it is, the Grace. I believe it's that. So we'll just cut that piece out. And everything should be fine. There's also a little pieces, a little bit of color here that's coming outside of the line, so I'll have to make sure I grab that. If your lasso tool doesn't make straight lines right away, like mine, just go to, it might make just freehand line drawing type lasso marks, and that's the default setting. But if you go here and you hold down, it'll show you all the different ones, and you want the middle one, the polygonal lasso. That's the one that I use almost all the time. Actually, 100% of the time I use that. And then I'll delete that. And then I will go in here. And I'll do that. The engine feels a little bit, feels like it should be a little bit darker, because it's a little bit too close to the background color blue. So I think I'm gonna okay, let's see. Whoops, wrong key. Oh, that's the wrong, I don't want levels. I want hue and saturation. So I'm going to go down to lightness. I'm going to try darkening it just a little bit to pop it out. And it looks like everything is hunky-dory. So one more, I'm going to save it just because I don't trust Photoshop. And I got one more idea I'm going to do. Now I'm going to make a new layer. I'm going to label it grid. And what I'm going to make is a pattern. I'm not sure if I have this in here. I'm looking for a like a checkerboard. Like that, but not so much fuzziness in it. Just a straightforward horizontal vertical line. I don't have one in my library right now, so I'm going to have to make a new pattern. So to do that, I'm going to pull this out so it's in its own window, and then I'm going to create a new project, and this is going to be grid. It does not need to be a 300 DPI because it's just going to be, you know, whatever, little guinea pig. 100 by 100. I turn off the ruler on there, and I'm going to press X to bring black to the front, and then I'm going to make some checkerboard lines. So I'm going to make this grid here. So in order to make this grid equal, so every square is the exact same size, first I made the canvas an even number, so it's 100 pixels wide by 100 pixels tall. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to find the middle area. There's a number of ways you can do that. That you can use. There's a window called the info bar, and it looks like this. And when you move it around inside a canvas, then all these numbers change and stuff. And what I'm going to do is change the info panel options so that I actually, the ruler units read in pixels. So now these numbers, like right in here, those numbers are pixels and not inches. So what I'm going to do is now I'm going to go back to my marquee tool and create a rectangular marquee. Hold shift down so it's a fixed perfect square. And I'm going to basically, actually first I'm going to try to find the middle, and we're looking for the X. So the X right there, if you look at it, the X reads 50. So I'm going to turn on my rulers, and if you move the mouse cursor into the ruler area, you can drag guides out, and you want to match the guide so that it fits directly on top of that side of the rectangle. And then you turn it off, and now you've got a perfect split between the two sides. Now if you want to do for the next one, you can bring it up until it reads 50 on the X axis, which is the Y axis right here. And so that's 50. So you go up here to the top ruler, drag down a bar, make sure it fits right on the top, and then just turn it off, and now you've got you've divided it into 4 smaller squares. So now I'm going to use that as my area to split into perfect squares, and now I don't need the guides anymore. So I'm going to go back to the move tool, and if I mouse over these guidelines, it turns into an up down arrow, and I can drag them around. So I'm just going to drag them back up to the rulers on the borders of the canvas to make them disappear. And then I'm going to actually thicken these lines up a little bit because I want the lines to actually read smaller. And then now that that's done, I'm going to move my info box back to where I usually keep it, which is, I have a dual screen setup, so a lot of my windows are on my other screen. So and then once we've got this pattern done, I'm going to go up here to image, or whoops, up to edit, and then where is it? Define pattern, right here under edit. I'm going to click that, and so we'll just call it grid. It's already called grid because the document is called grid, and we'll hit OK, and now it's a pattern. So if we go back to here, and we go back to our grid layer, which is right here that we made earlier, and we double click inside that layer area, we pick pattern overlay. If we go all the way down to the bottom, whoop, there's our pattern. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the pattern to, oops, you know what? I'm going to move it on top. That's why I can't see it. There we go. Now I'm going to bring the pattern. I was wondering why I couldn't see it before. It should be visible. You have to actually, I'm going to delete the grid pattern line. You have to actually use it on a layer that's got color already inside it. If the layer is transparent, if it's empty, the pattern won't work. That's I forgot about that part. So yeah, see, now did you see how it changed? It filled with the pattern. So we move back. Now we have this checker pattern. So I'm going to shrink it down just a little bit. Oh wait, that's opacity. There we go. I'm going to bring it down to 50%. Oh, screw it. I'll just type it in. And then do that. And then I'm going to duplicate this layer because I want that black area, or that I want it to be more of a solid blue. So I'm going to go down here and drag that effects layer, that pattern layer out, so it's just a regular layer again. I'm going to push this up so I can get the thing, turn this guy off, don't need to save it. And then I'm going to take this guy, actually I'm going to bake I'm going to create a new layer, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to bake this layer effect that's in this guy down here. I'm going to bake this layer, this effect into the layer. By doing that, I create an empty layer and I drag it down below the target layer I'm going to bake, and then I merge down onto the empty layer. And what that does is it bakes the pattern effect into the layer, and it rasterizes it. Rasterizing is where you turn something that's like algorithmically based or vector based and turns it into just raw pixel information. So now we turn it off. But the thing is I want these lines, the grid lines, I want them to be white, and I want this blue area to show up. So, how am I going to do that? Maybe if I invert it. But if I invert it, the blue turns too dark, and I'm not sure if I want that. So what I'm going to do instead is I'm going to use, oops, wrong one. Now what I did is, to get this, is I used multiply, but now while I've got that main color correct, the grid lines are now darker, and I wanted those to be a white color. So I'm halfway there, but I'm not there yet. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna turn the multiply off back to normal, and instead I'm gonna hit Control A for select all. So you can see at the very edges you get the little marching ants, the selection, and it selects the entire perimeter of the canvas. And I'm going to go over to, let me see my channels here. So I'm going to create an alpha channel based off this layer. Whoops. Or I'm gonna create a new alpha, and then I'm gonna take this dude, copy it, and put it into there, and then mirror it, or not mirror it, but invert it. And then now when I select inside of it, it grabs, because this is an alpha channel, so it's grabbing, it's basically grabbing any of the white. So it auto lassos anything that's white inside the alpha, and it auto grab everything. You hold control down and left click in the thumbnail of the alpha, and it will auto lasso anything that's white in there. And so now that I've got that, I am going to go back to my color layer, turn off that rasterized grid that I made, create a new layer called grid, and then I'm going to create an all white text color, and then I'm going to fill the selection with white. And to do that, I use Alt Delete, and now the white's in there. So now I've got the white and the solid color I want, and everything's awesome. Everything's cha-ching. I don't know what that means. I got that from a movie. So yeah. So now we've got our little blueprint grid in the background, and some of our windows and everything, but it still feels blank on the outside. It still feels like there could be stuff out here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a little graphic design where I'm going to create a new window that sits back there. So I'm going to create a new layer. I'm going to do background frame. And then I'm just gonna thumbnail. I want all of the frames in this to be consistent, so I'm gonna eyedrop the color of this other frame down here in this other window, and then I'm going to use the lasso tool to make a new window. Now, usually with sci-fi type stuff, you want to do 45-degree angles on corners because it looks techy, and the reason why it looks technical is because it's emulating the appearance of a circuit board. That's where that 45-degree angle techy appearance came from. So if you look at a circuit board, it's all 45-degree angles and super straight lines, and that's where that design motif came from. And so I'm gonna I want to create a line that follows the area of this lasso tool selection I made. So I'm going to go to stroke, which is, for me, it's Control W, but I can't remember what the default hotkey is. I think it's still Control W. And then I'm going to increase the pixel width to, like, I don't know, 10 pixels. We'll see what that looks like. Nah, it's too thin. So we'll go back, we'll undo that, and I'll go to like 20 pixels. That's a little bit better. Yeah, that's fine. But there's some pieces of it that are like nicking it, like right over here. It's nicking this logo, and that's bad placement. You either, with borders, you either want to go all the way or not at all when you're intersecting something. So if I'm going to intersect, like a good example of that is right here on the front of the ship. It's clearly going like right through the nose of the ship. underneath it. If I was like right here and just barely nicking this front part or barely nicking this corner, that would be bad. You either go all the way through and you make a clear, definite slice through the background of the border of the object you're framing, or you stay well away from it, like you would up here or here or here. Now this is a little questionable because this is just a little bit sticking out, but I don't like the way that it's sticking out. It's so close to this logo, so I'm going to use my move tool and hold shift so I can lock the direction I want to move it. And now it looks a little bit better because now it's sticking out more here. There's still plenty of sticking out over here. Now there's a good bit of distance away from the logo. The Project Cosmos logo is now kind of like almost sitting on top of that line. So I've got to go back to that and then move that over. Maybe I'll move it up a little bit. We're almost there. And then I'm going to use the wand tool. And let's see, where's that background frame? I'm going to click inside there. And then I'm going to click for that. But then I don't want it to be the same color as the frame, so I'm going to put go up here to opacity. And I'm going to drop the opacity down. Make it look a little bit fainter. You know what I did? I ended up putting it right inside the same background frame. I'll make a new layer and then I'll put it in there because I want the background, I want the frame to actually retain that dark color, but I want the stuff I filled in. There we go. See how the frame, the border is still dark? That's what I was initially going for. My brain's fried, so I might make a lot of stupid errors. That's how I roll. Okay, so it's gonna be, I'll go at 40% opacity. Whoops, accidentally selected it again. Go back to the air. And then save it again. Now because I'm planning on getting this framed, I'm gonna extend the borders of the page so that there's room for a frame so that if it's ever framed or if somebody wants to frame it, the edges of the frame aren't gonna like encroach on the borders of the artwork, and it'll look a little bit more presentable. But I think for now this is pretty much done. I think this is pretty much finished. So that's that. That's the Morningstar blueprint for Project Cosmos. And the next one I'm going to work on is another ship in the Project Cosmos universe. It's known as the oh geez, I can't even remember what it's called. It's called the Gossamer Willow, and it's a gas trawler ship, so it's far, far, far bigger than the Morningstar. But it's captained by another character in the universe that is acquainted with the characters who are in this ship that we just did here that you see. So everything's kind of knitted together. But when we come back, we'll work on the Gossamer Willow, and you'll get to see that. And it's a totally different ship. It's not a cross-section, it's just pure external, but it probably will end up being a cross-section at some point, and then I might record that too. But for now, that's that, and I hope you had fun and learned something. Adios.